Dallas Mavericks offseason article is up on ESPN.com. The Mavericks have been eliminated by Golden State in 5 games. As we like to say in the world of the NBA, a gentleman's sweep when you win Game 4 and then wind up losing in 5 games like the Mavericks did in San Francisco on Thursday night. Certainly a lot to be proud of if you are a Dallas fan and if you're part of this front office and this coaching staff as far as big picture. 32-23 at the deadline. You make the Porzingis trade to get Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans. You break up that Porzingis contract into 2. You basically go on a 20-7 run, second best record in the NBA behind the Celtics. Beat Utah, destroy Phoenix in Game 7, and let's face it, you basically run into a team that in Golden State that's playing the best basketball of any of the 4 teams that were, in these conference finals here, and they will be an extremely tough out if they play Boston. But on to Dallas as far as what the offseason is going to be. It's going to get expensive. Your backcourt of Luka and Spencer Dinwiddie, Jalen Brunson could cost you $300 million in contracts moving forward here. And where this Dallas team goes, you've got 14 players under contract. You've got your first-round pick in the draft. The focus, of course, is going to be what happens with Jalen Brunson. He has certainly outplayed his $1.8 million contract. And in the offseason article, we have a full section on Brunson. This team in Dallas is over the salary cap. They are $6 million over the luxury tax. Brunson is an unrestricted free agent. Dallas can re-sign him and exceed the salary cap. They can exceed the luxury tax threshold. But as I said, it will cost them dearly. And I think it all goes back to basically his contract that he signed back in 2018. One of the rare contracts, and I'm not going to harp on it, it's been well documented as far as when players sign these second-round contracts, usually it's for 4 years, but you have a team option after the 3rd year. Basically, you decline that option, then the player becomes a restricted free agent. Or it's a 3-year contract, and then the player becomes a restricted free agent. Basically, a player has 3 years or less non-first-round picks, and when they're going to free agency, they get the restricted tag as long as they're tendered a qualifying offer. In Brunson's case, he basically had a 4-year contract. There was no team option on the back end. It was the 4th year was a non-guaranteed year, and now he is an unrestricted free agent. He can sign with any team out there. Dallas does not have the right to match on a contract. So if you're looking at Detroit, San Antonio, Indiana, Portland, Orlando, those are basically your teams that have cap space. And I do think it was a miss last year, and I understand Dallas's philosophy based off, you're coming off that Clipper series. Brunson did not play well. Basically, we didn't know what his role was going to be. 4 years, $55.8 million extension was not offered. Was not offered during the regular season. You can read Tim McMahon's article, who basically lays everything out and even talks to his father, Tim Hardaway Sr. Dallas approaches him after the trade deadline. Now that's off the table, and I don't see Brunson signing that up until June 30th here. And why is that such a big deal? Because basically Brunson has outplayed that extension. That $12.4 million in the first year is now likely going to be $20 million. And the difference from 20 to 12, it's like a $41 million difference when we're talking about the luxury tax. So it's a $50 million mistake next year if Brunson comes in at that $20 million. Hey, if he comes in at 13 and there's nobody out there that can sign him, then Dallas made the right decision here. But I don't think that's going to happen. And Brunson is certainly a priority. As I said, it is going to be expensive to retain him. I could see a team like Detroit coming in Is there a team like New York out there potentially that can basically move players like Kemba Walker and Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel, create the cap space, and they can just go out and sign Jalen Brunson without having to give up anything at all? The other thing with Brunson, and let's say we get to a stalemate and Dallas wants to use him, his contract, and maybe balance out their roster a little bit here. Brunson's got base year compensation in his deal as far as from a trade standpoint. So what that means is that because the Mavericks are over the salary cap and Brunson's getting a raise of more than 120%, half of his contract, his new contract, counts in a trade. So basically, if Brunson is a $20 million guy, for trade purposes, it's $10 million in salary. As far as outgoing, incoming, it's $20 million. So we're going to talk about base year. We're actually going to do probably a video down the road on this. I know everyone's don't get all excited here about base year compensation and DeAndre Ayton and Zach LaVine and players like that. He's got base year, and it's going to be hard as far as to do a sign in trade. The higher the salary goes, the more challenging it goes. So here's to clarify. So for trade purposes, 50% of Brunson's incoming salary for a new team apply. That means a $20 million salary counts as only $10 million in incoming salary, but the full amount, which is 20, is still applied towards outgoing salary. It's a complicated nuance. I basically need a whiteboard to kind of lay out everything here, but base year applies for Jalen Brunson. Dallas can't take back players in a sign-in trade because they'll be hard capped. They're basically right at the hard cap restriction, so they are restricted in at that standpoint. They still have leverage. I know Brunson's unrestricted, but based on the market, based on they can offer him more money, they can offer him more years, there is still a leverage play there. But I think if you're Dallas, you're probably looking at the $78 million extension that Marcus Smart got, the 4-year $78. Terry Rozier got 4 for $96. Fred VanVleet got 4 for 70 plus, 72, 74, in that range here. Tim Hardaway got 4 for 75 last year. So I think that's I think you're in that 4 for 80, 4 for 85. I don't think it goes 4 for 100. $25 million for Jalen Brunson is a big price tag. So Brunson is certainly your priority as far as when your offseason goes. You've got a lot of resources here. I know we've talked about the Mavericks being over the salary cap. You've got 14 players under contract. That includes Frank Ntilikina, who actually came in and gave you some good minutes. His contract is non-guaranteed. There's a trigger date for him. But here's what you have to build off of. You need a rim protector at center. You need a rebounder. I'm sorry, Dwight Powell does not cut it. 2 rebounds basically in the first half in 5 minutes. You've got your own first-round pick, which is, I believe, pick 26. You've got Jalen Brunson as your own free agent. 13 players, as I call them, sweet spot contracts, tradable contracts between $2 million and $19.6 million. So you broke up the Porzingis trade. You have all these contracts now that you can go out and do a deal. You've got your tax mid-level exception at 6'4". You can trade your first-round pick the night of the draft and then trade the rights to him. You can trade a future pick. You owe that pick, remember, to New York from the Porzingis trade. And basically, it's protected top 10 in 2023, 24, 25. The earliest you can trade a pick is 2 years after it's conveyed to New York. So you can put in there, potentially that could be in 2025. Likely that pick will go to New York next year because this Dallas team will be a playoff team. But the Western Conference is going to be a bear. So it will be a huge accomplishment getting to that 4 seed with New Orleans. We don't know what's going to happen with the Lakers. The Clippers we've talked about with Kawhi and Paul George. Denver with Murray and Porter. The West is going to get better. We'll see what happens in Utah, who is the 5th seed. We've talked about Denver. Minnesota is another team with Tim Connolly now there in charge. But that is your offseason in Dallas. Great season. Great second half of the season with the trade deadline. With the Porzingis trade, certainly changed the dynamics of the team A great job coaching by Jason Kidd. I can't say enough about the job he was able to do there. Nico Harrison, their new general manager, certainly got